to another Through the Bible episode. We are on the 6th book of the Bible, the book of Joshua. We are finally out of the Pentateuch, the Torah. Not finally, it was great. But we're going to see a new author today because the author of the last 5 books is dead now in the timeline. Moses died a strong young old man.
A strong young old man?
Yeah, it says it. Look at, flip a couple pages.
Young old is not a thing.
Yeah.
You said strong young old man.
A strong, youthful old man.
That's Brian's goal.
His eyes were still strong. Okay. Yeah, people thought that Addison was my wife on Friday. Someone asked if Addison was my wife on Sunday.
What? Yeah, no,
I've also been asked at high school if I was Ellie's brother.
When I went ring shopping, the lady thought that
someone was like, "Oh yeah, you're Ellie's brother, right?"
You're Ellie's
Brian,
brother.
you are
right?
a youthful old man.
Yes, I love being a youthful. I want to stay a youthful old man like Moses till I'm 120, and then God can just kill me. All right, Joshua is Moses' successor. Why couldn't Moses go to the promised land? Why couldn't he was a youthful old man? Why couldn't he lead the people in? He needed to finish the job, Olivia.
He hit the rock.
He struck the rock instead of talking to it. That was the thing. It wasn't the only thing Moses did wrong, but the thing that God said, no, here your consequences for disobeying me, disobeying my authority is you will not enter the promised land. Just like the whole generation, Moses' generation of people were not allowed to go into the promised land because they disobeyed God and were afraid, didn't trust him to go in, and believed the spies that told them about the giants and said we can't do it. They didn't get to go in. So now we have Joshua and Caleb, the only surviving people who were born in Egypt. Not true.
No.
Some of them would have been born in Egypt. The only people who probably were slaves in Egypt. We'll say it that way, right? Like they were, because everyone else was a child, right? But like their whole generation, every one of their peers has died.
Kind of sad.
Joshua is actually only like 30 years younger than Moses, because isn't he 90?
I think we all think of him as a strapping young lad.
Yeah, we always think of him a lot younger. He was younger than Moses, but not a whole lot younger. So Moses hands off essentially leadership to Joshua. It's really neat. I did a study once on Moses and Joshua. I think they had a really cool relationship. Moses did an excellent job of raising up a leader to follow him. And that's actually something that's kind of difficult for a leader, but it's also incredibly valuable, is to leave like a legacy of leaders behind you. It's, it's kind of discipleship, right? Like training up someone to take your place.
Right,
it's kind of awkward.
You work yourself out of a job.
It's kind of awkward because like you're training your replacement, and it's kind of like, well, that person like tried to usurp my throne.
Or when you were youth pastor, didn't you take the job?
Yes, so that was done for me. It was really awesome. I was trained up by the guy who had this job before me, and he, I was his intern, and then he moved on, and I got to take his job. And it's something that's hard to do because it's kind of awkward, but it's incredibly important and incredibly valuable. We're seeing this happen right now at my friend's church at Sunrise Baptist. It's public now. Our youth pastor there is taking another position at the same church. He's going to become the executive pastor, which is like organizational pastor and other things. And the youth intern is becoming the youth pastor there.
He's the best.
And so it's a really neat thing. It's a really cool transition, and Moses and Joshua did this. But all the way back after they left Egypt, we see Joshua kind of tagging along with Moses. Like when Moses went up to the top of the Mount Sinai, do you know where Joshua was?
The bottom.
He was halfway up the mountain. Is that what you said? Yes.
I guess. Me too.
So Joshua couldn't go to the top, but he wasn't there where all the people were doing evil things. Maybe he could have stopped that. But like Moses brought Joshua along. So from the very early, like Moses was training Joshua, this guy, to lead the people. And I think it's interesting because there's nobody really that follows Joshua. There's maybe also not as much of a need for a central leader, because at the end of this book, they've conquered the lands and divided up and spread out. But there's no one really that comes up after Joshua. So that's actually one thing, maybe a criticism of Joshua, is he didn't do that for anyone else. He didn't rise up a leader to really lead after him. You could make the argument that wasn't necessary, but Moses does an incredible job and really sets up the people of Israel for success in his absence. And I think that's a really cool thing. So, author. It doesn't say that Joshua wrote this, but everyone kind of thinks that Joshua did. It could have been someone else, but likely, what do your guys' study Bibles say?
It's Joshua except for the ending, which is maybe written by the high priest.
Yeah.
If Joshua himself did not originate this book that bears his name, someone who knew him well likely did.
Yes.
There are a number of references throughout Joshua that suggest final editing of the book after his lifetime.
So it's probably, finally put together. Maybe he wrote this and someone edited it together. It just doesn't say specifically. So we assume Joshua wrote it, except for the ending, like the book of Deuteronomy. Moses couldn't have written the ending, right? Because he died. It's hard to write. Moses died before he died. Maybe he knew, but anyway, probably Joshua. Once again, our audience. What do you guys think?
What's the genre?
Oh, genre would be historical narrative. There's some more law in here. He kind of does some review of the law, but historical narrative, and probably some. We'll call it geography. Geographical. Because it describes the sections of land that is divided up between the people of Israel, where they should go. So geographical and historical narrative. Audience.
You did not fill us in, so now I guess the students get to.
Oh yeah, I didn't put it in the notes.
What's the audience?
Take a guess.
The people.
People.
Yeah, it's
What people?
The Hebrew.
the Hebrew people to
Not
see.
Egyptians. Hebrew people.
It can have a couple purposes, so it actually defines the spaces where they were to live and dwell in. But yeah, the history to see what God did with the people and how he worked through Joshua. And then for us to see that as well. When and where? I'll put it at 1405 to 1385 BC. Which is like a 30-year period, right?
No, a 20-year period.
20-year period. So we only have left Joshua and Caleb, who, were adults in Egypt that they really would have remembered it. I mean, there could have been a 19-year-old, 20-year-old that could have remembered it too. He was 90. Yeah, here we go. 90 years old when he took over the leadership. So when this book starts, he was 90. And he's 110 when he dies. So that's the 20-year time span. He had, how long did Moses lead the people for?
For a bunch of years.
40 years. So Joshua leads the people for half that. So if Moses was 120 when he died, how many, and Joshua is 90, how many years younger is Joshua than Moses? 30
I'm
years.
not here to do math. I'm here to learn the Bible.
Okay,
It's Sunday school. Come on.
So right now, Joshua's 90 going to the promised land. Don't answer this, okay, Brian? What is the oldest next person in the group of the Hebrew people?
Good question.
Caleb.
Besides Joshua and
Okay,
Caleb.
sorry, they're all the people. What would their age be? It's just a matter.
20.
No,
60.
No.
60, because
60.
they were 20 years old,
They were
and then
20
they had
and
it
younger,
40 years.
and they had to wait 40 years.
So 20 and younger at the time of the
consequence.
1 year after them, at Mount Sinai, building the tabernacle, then they go to the promised land. Then they wander for 40 years, and that everyone over 20 dies. So
Right.
60, 40 years,
So then-
roughly
we
60.
took this last time. That's what I remember.
So the
Time to retire to the promised land.
60 and younger is now entering the promised land with their leader Joshua, who's 90.
So
Okay.
there would be a lot of kids that were born in the time of the wilderness that don't remember Egypt. So
No,
this
well,
is significant.
Weren't in Egypt.
The majority of the people
They
would
just don't remember
never
it.
have been
Yeah,
in,
never been.
That's
there.
why they wrote Deuteronomy.
So Deuteronomy, like we looked at, exactly, was a review of all that had happened, right? So, the goal of this book, the goal of it's it's writing down the entering of the promised land. So there's actually some repetition of what happened last time. They literally send in spies again. They do some of this stuff again but because this is their second try to enter the promised land. They're gonna try again.
Right, but it's a whole.
But this time it's it's a totally different group of people. And do you think they're gonna make it? Or are they gonna get afraid again? Like that's kind of on the line. Like it could have happened the same way.
All the grumblers, God had die off on purpose.
Yeah.
All the doubters, God was raising up a new generation.
All right, we got our main characters. We got Joshua. We got the spies. And then who becomes apparent is a character that lives in the land, a Canaanite woman that lives in, what city does Rahab live
Jericho.
in? Jericho. One of the first cities they go to. And we have like the 12 tribes. So they'd be like a main character because they're very much described as where they end up. All right, there's kind of...
Rahab has a cool spot.
Yeah, there's a cool story about Rahab. It really...
What tribe does Rahab go to?
She marries in...
Judah?
Yes, the tribe of Judah.
Yeah, Jesus comes from her.
Rahab becomes in the line of King David. She marries into the line of King David, which, as you know, is the line of Jesus. So it's really cool. She's actually...
Boaz's mom.
She's Boaz's
So
mom or grandma?
Grandma.
Oh, grandma, am I one off?
I think
no,
so.
I think it's mom.
So she's like a great grandma to King David or something like that.
I'll look it up.
I think it's mom, because I was like, no wonder Boaz loves women in distress, because his mom was a woman in distress. You know, like,
So it's pretty
Boaz is
cool.
a heart for people.
Just
So
look it up.
so that's fast forward to Jesus. We see Jesus' ancestors here in the story in a pretty neat way.
Okay, great. Where's
His
Jesus?
mother was Rahab.
In Rahab.
Boaz's mom was Rahab.
Yeah.
Okay, Jessica was right. Boaz's mom was Rahab. And then, as you know, Boaz married who? Ruth, the book of Ruth.
Right. So Rahab, this is a quick side. Rahab is an example of grace and mercy and grace. She was not only brought into the Israelites mercifully, like they're not going to be killed, but God graciously gave her a gift of becoming the grandmother of King David, the
Yep.
grandmother of King David, and that line of Jesus. So God is both merciful and gracious to Rahab.
Does anyone know what people group Amorite or something, or Midianite that Jericho people are? I'm just curious. Anyway, maybe we'll see that. All right, we've got kind of 4 sections to lay out the outline of this book. And we're going to deal with a topic that I think we did an apologetics question on. Maybe not. I think we just talked about the Old Testament generally. But there's basically a really big apologetics question in this book, which could be a tough question for you to answer when you talk about the Bible, and a tough topic to deal with. Actually a very difficult topic to deal with in the story of the Bible. What is that topic that we're about to see? Conquering the battles. Yes. Basically we're going into the Canaanite land. It's not just an open field where they get to take over. Who is there? People groups, cities. There's all kinds of people. Canaanites, we'll call them. It's the region of Canaan. And God tells them to destroy these people in general. Specifically, then there's some other rules we're going to look at. But for some of the people groups, the people of Israel were commanded to go in and completely destroy the people. And this is not just, I won't sugarcoat it, this is not just like a war, so men fighting men, soldiers fighting soldiers. God told the people to go in and kill everyone. Everything. Men, women, child, animals. All of it. And burn the cities.
They're like, nope.
This is totally against the Geneva Convention, right? The Geneva Convention is has rules about prisoners of war and about wartime rules. This is against all those things, right? So we have to answer that question. Why would God send the people to do this? Should God do that? We could ask that question. It feels right. Are we gonna? But why did God do this? Let's look at that question. But first, the people have to get ready to go in, and the Joshua is established as leader. Joshua charges the Israelites to get ready. They're going to cross the Jordan River. What happens when you cross the Jordan River?
You become a Hebrew.
You become a Hebrew. It means to cross over. I looked it up. It's not specifically the Jordan River, but Hebrew means to cross
last
over.
time we called the audience the next generation of Hebrews, and then like we called the audience. Oh wait, never mind.
The Israelites.
In Exodus we called them Hebrews, but they hadn't crossed the
They
river
hadn't
yet.
become Hebrews yet. But they kind of are, because guess who crossed over the Jordan River?
The spies.
Everyone.
Their great grandfather
Abraham.
Abraham crossed the Jordan River. So they became Hebrews then. So the Israelites, so they send in the spies, and the two spies go to Rahab. We'll just do this story really quick. It's kind of an example of how this happens too. God tells them that to destroy the city, and it gives them specific instructions on how to do it. But they send in spies first, and the spies they hide at Rahab's house. Now Rahab is their enemy, right? They're coming to destroy her city. Why does Rahab protect the spies?
Because she had faith.
She had faith. Faith in what?
God.
She had faith in God. It says it. I'm kind of, my references are messed up.
Your references are always messed up.
No, they're not messed up. I just don't know where they are. So Rahab. Okay, verse 17,
Of what chapter?
chapter 2. Oh, that's the promise.
Crossing the Jordan.
Oh, it's verse 9 where she makes her statement of faith. Would anyone read verse 9 and 10 of chapter 2 for us? Olivia.
Before the spies lay down for the night, she went up to the roof and said to them, I know that the Lord has given you this land, in that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea, for when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sidon, and what's that?
Og.
Og, and the two kings of the Amorites in the east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed.
Also, that was like 40 years ago.
No, they had a battle already under Moses.
The crossing of the Red Sea was 40 years
Okay,
ago.
the crossing of the Red Sea, yes. So there is, that's a long time ago. But the stories of the people, what they've done, what they're about to do, the people of Jericho. Now, it's interesting. Jericho is like the strongest fortified city in this land. It's very interesting that God chose them to go there first. It's kind of like when you go to prison, you're supposed to beat up the biggest, toughest guy on your first day.
Why and how? You know, that's why you tell us this.
Because then no one will mess with you. Because you beat up the biggest, toughest guy on your first day. It's exactly like that. So
Everyone's looking at you questionably.
He's telling us to do things in jail.
no, it's exact
Jacob
same
agrees.
thing.
Jacob
God
agrees.
sends them to the biggest, toughest city first.
Right, makes sense.
Because then, and they're afraid even. They have the thickest, strongest walls even, right? So like, it's like a big confidence boost, just declaring if they can beat Jericho, they can take anyone. So it's really interesting. And what happens after this, it really shows all the kings like unite against them to show that they're really afraid. But Rahab displays faith. She's heard the story and she puts her trust in God. I mean, it's a crazy thing. And what happens to Rahab because of that?
She survived.
She is protected, right? So that's one of the things. So was the destruction of the Canaanites wrong, evil, genocide? Is my question.
Well, God told him to.
It's a genocide, but I don't know.
Is it wrong and evil, and is it genocide?
If God told
Genocide
him
means to
people
destroy
would
like
do
a
it.
whole race of people,
If Rahab's
like all of
faith
them, wipe
saved
them
her,
out.
I would put out the argument that other people's faith in God would have saved them. So really, they are a faithless people.
So I think that's one example to show that God wasn't just destroying the people because because they're Canaanite or something, right? Because of their race, we'll say. Because he accepted people who came to faith in them. But there's also, like, you could say, like, it's like convert or die. Like, was that the charge?
Yeah,
like the Crusades. Like, is this like a Crusades under God? So I don't want to make that the only reason, because that's also not right. Like, convert or die. You don't go to people and be like, become Christian or I'll kill you, right? Like, that's not the right thing to do either. So there was an element that people who put full trust and faith in God would be saved. But it wasn't a convert or die thing, and somehow on the same level. Now, the first place to start, is to think about who God is as the creator of everything, as a creator of all creation. All creation, everything that he has ever made is his, and that it is his right to destroy it. So him destroying his creation, it seems wrong, and it would be wrong for us to do that, but he can also give us a command, do not murder. But it is not wrong for God to do it, for God to put justice on evil people. The flood. Somehow we think of this a little bit differently than the flood, I think because God is having his people do it.
Yeah.
But God destroyed absolutely destroyed even more people with the flood. All the people on the earth except for Noah. We've talked about how awful of a story that is. It's not a children's story. It is a story of destruction, right? But was the flooding God's right to do?
Yes.
Yeah, it was. This is hard stuff, right? But this is the God, the creator of the universe, the creator of all these people. He has given them life. He has the right to take it away. Okay, so that's where we should start, with identifying who God is and what is within his rights. If you make a Lego castle and your friend destroys it, you could be mad, right? But if you destroy it, it's your right? You take your Lego castle down. You created it, you can take it down. Kind of that idea.
You're saying that to your children, if you birth children, that you can take it down because you created it?
Did you give your children life? Did you breathe life into your children? No. That's still God. You had a part in it, but God is the giver of life.
That's what our world does kind of say. We say my body, my choice, right? That's what they say.
But did you? The miracle of life is not. Parents don't make that happen. They take part in it, but God is the giver of life, and so yes, he can take it away. That is within his right. That's where I want to start, with not saying, "Oh God, why could you do this?" It is within his rights. It is only by his mercy that he's allowed this evil world to continue on and on. He could destroy it, but he is a patient, understanding God. It is part of his plan. So first of all, we can trust him even with seemingly horrible, evil acts. Yes?
You said that we're just kind of like a part in it. That kind of reminds me of if you built it's like when you build a really cool robot, and then your sibling comes over and asks if they can be the one to turn it on,
Sure. Yeah. If you create it, I think it gives you a right to it, right? Okay. The second part is, these were absolutely evil people. These were people who are described as child sacrificing. Their religions were horribly sexual and awful. So these were not, even on no one's innocent, but even on another level, an evil people their religions were absolutely an atrocity to God and an atrocity and destructive to other people. And this had been going on for a long time. So more than 500 years, these people were described as doing these evil things much longer before. So in Leviticus 18, it's described the way they worship their idols sexually. And in Deuteronomy 12, child sacrifice is described. So just two examples of how evil these people were. And that's 500, that's long ago, 500 years ago at least, of this evil happening. I will also add in there, the people had an opportunity to repent and turn to God as individuals, okay? So Rahab and other people, they could turn to God. It wasn't a repent or die thing, but individuals could turn. And then God also makes allowances. He gave special instructions in Deuteronomy 20, if you want to look there, for certain cities that were further away. He gave, he talks about, when you go to them, prepare to battle, and then the officers will say, go before him, is anyone here afraid when you approach it, verse 10, when you approach a town and attack it, you must first offer its people terms for peace. If they accept your terms and open the gates to you, then all the people inside will serve you in forced labor. But if they refuse to make peace, prepare to fight, you must attack the town. So with a lot of the cities in the surrounding areas, there was an offer of peace. Interestingly enough, it wasn't just total destruction of everyone, but there absolutely were cities that God told them to completely destroy. So Deuteronomy 7. When the Lord your God brings you into the land you are about to occupy, he will clear away many nations ahead of you. Do you hear that language too? Who's clearing them away? God. This is an act of God. It's not like an act of evil by the people. God. This is God's responsibility. He will clear the nations ahead of you. The Hittites, Girgashites, Ammonites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. These 7 nations are greater and more numerous than you. When the Lord your God hands over these nations to you, you conquer them. You must completely destroy them. Make no treaties with them. Show them no mercy. You must not intermarry with them. Do not let your daughters and sons marry their sons and daughters, for they will lead your children away from me to worship other gods, and then the anger of the Lord will burn against you, and he will quickly destroy
I
you.
love that there's a rule and a reason.
Yeah. So this land that God has given to his people, there are evil people living there. They would influence for evil the people of Israel, so that's kind of the reason as well. They're also being judged, them specifically, for their evil. Ultimately, God is God. We are not. He has a plan for this world and his people ultimately, and for his people, like, to make salvation available to all. But this is a unique moment in history where God is instructing this. So it's not a precedent. It's not it's not a precedent for the Crusades or anything like that. It was a specific moment in people that in time where God chose to do this, to destroy. It's still a difficult subject. It can still be difficult to hear and read, but we need to trust that this is within God's character and right to do. The Bible Project mentioned something I do want to mention. It kind of gives this illusion. The Bible Project says that it was kind of hyperbole, which is like exaggeration. Hyperbole. Sorry. Hyperbole. It's like an exaggeration to destroy them all. And so it references that it says to destroy them all, and then it references that not everyone was destroyed. I think that takes away that even though if that's true, like some people survived, like it doesn't mean that God was okay to command that still. Like it kind of like makes this little gray area, like, oh, God didn't really mean destroy them all. I think he did, and I think that's within God's right. So anyway, the Bible Project mentions that. I looked up the verses, and it's not super clear, but there are some like people from the nations that it says they destroyed them all. That's what they're saying. That's why it's hyperbole. But yeah, that's basically what I wanted to say on that. The rest of the book has them conquering the promised land. We can't go into this much. We're running out of time. And then distributing the promised land, 13 to 22. And then ends with Joshua's farewell and challenge, which I want to look at for our main idea. But let's go to the Bible Project video now and see how they describe it. So we got to continue on with our purpose. I'm going to say these are the results of trusting God. Like we saw a whole generation not trust God. And then we see a generation trusting God and being successful and being given the land. So it's really contrasted. This is what happens when you trust God. He is faithful. God keeps his end of the deal. Like you could say, like, come on, God, you brought these people out and then you're just having them wander around. Like, no, it was God asked the people to trust him, and if they didn't, they wouldn't get to do it. So redemption for the people, and then the giving and distribution of the land, that's definitely a big purpose of it. How do we see Jesus? Rahab is in Jesus' genealogy, which is cool. Joshua is what we call a type of Christ, another person who is like a savior, Messiah, but not a perfect one. And even Joshua's name is Yeshua, which is the same root name as Jesus' root name. So there's even a connection there. But yes. Not as specific. We don't see the angel of the Lord or anything in this. I like this verse. I think it could be the purpose of it. This is the most famous verse in Joshua. Everyone likes to have it in their house because it says, "For me and my house, we will serve the Lord." But it's a good final charge. Basically, at the end of the book, Joshua is kind of giving a speech to the people. He's like, "Hey, I'm dying. You have a choice. Are you going to serve the people? Are you going to go to worship the nation around you, idols, or are you going to serve God? As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." So it's this charge like, if you obey the Lord, he'll be faithful to you. But if you do what your neighbors do and worship idols and be evil, you're going to be destroyed too. And God keeps that promise as we see going on. God is faithful to his people and patient with them. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord.
That. He definitely says you have to serve something. He says, choose this day who you will serve. Like, sometimes we think that we can just, as we just fall away from Christianity and that we're just serving no one, but we're always serving some God. Whether it's the God of self or maybe an actual idol. He makes it clear that you have to serve something with your life. So choose wisely. Choose the best.
Yeah.
Choose
We all serve something. All right. That's the book of Joshua.
Boom, bada bang.